Hey,
Yeah.
and that means we should be live.
All right. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Whoa.
All
Oh, it
right.
seems to be working even.
Hey, we can actually hear voices. Is that true?
Hopefully they can hear us.
We're gonna
I
find
can
out in a
see us.
moment. If we get it right on the first try, it'll be a miracle. Honestly,
I mean, it's showing up for me.
incredible, incredible.
Well,
I
no,
love it.
no one's saying they can't hear us, so I'm going to assume they can. Oh, they can. There we go.
Oh my gosh, this feels magical. Truly, hashtag blessed. Uh, Remember that
All
you get
right.
1d4.
Amazing. All right. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the first ever One Very Odd Stream. My name is Spencer. You probably know who I am. I will be your host this evening. I'm also an online event coordinator for Baldman Games. That means I help coordinate online events. With me is Ted, our event manager. He's the one who actually makes sure that I don't screw things up too badly and handles all the technical things that make the shows go, as well as just being a wonderful all around person.
Well, thank you, Spencer. I appreciate that.
Uh, you are very welcome. And as a special guest this evening, we have Cassandra MacDonald, indie game developer of best-selling games like Diesel. Huge, amazing game. If you've played that, if you haven't played that yet, you definitely should. Is here to help us talk about how some of these 1DD things will affect gameplay as a bit of an expert in the field.
Oh boy, do I have thoughts.
Yeah, if we want to talk about expert, by the way, by my count, you have just for D&D over a dozen. I'm just throwing them up here on the screen for everybody. Different titles that are on DM's Guild right now with a variety of different people.
I'll take your
Yep,
word
no,
for it. That sounds about
it
right.
just keeps coming. You also have this Skullport one. Nope, that's not the Skullport one. The Skullport one, which is your solo one, yeah.
Yes.
Shadows
It's
of
my
War.
big debut.
Yeah, very very cool. You also did some charity work here, the Book of Heart, and then of course, as Spencer mentioned, Diesel,
Yes.
just burying us in our own inadequacy here beneath
Oh no.
your many titles.
This was not what I meant.
All right.
How am I going to introduce myself without seeming egotistical? Meanwhile, Ted.
Oh, don't worry, we got you. We got you. All right.
All right. Today we'll be talking about a few different things. First of all, we're going to go over a little bit what is 1D&D, what makes it special and why it matters, sort of thing. Then we're going to sort of talk about it a little bit. We will talk about our thoughts on it. We'll get some additional ideas from Cassandra and how it'll affect gameplay. We'll have some Q&A from you. We've got a couple questions already that we collected from the Discord, and we'll be taking live questions as well from the audience. From there, we'll go to talk a bit about how 1D&D will affect the virtual D&D weekends. I know a bunch of you have strong thoughts about that. We'll try and answer some questions as best we can. That'll mostly be Ted. And then we'll sort of wrap up and go from there. With no further ado, let's get started. Ted, why don't you tell us what is 1D&D?
Sure. So the best way to talk about 1D&D is to start by saying that this is not supposed to be the next edition of D&D. There's been a lot of discussion about whether or not we're going to have 5.5, whether it's just going to be 6th edition. But what Wizards of the Coast is telling us here is that 1D&D is expected to be sort of the ongoing, more or less final version of D&D, at least for the foreseeable future. This is taking the stuff that already works with 5th edition and building out content iteratively that's going to continue to enhance that. We've already seen some of the work that we expect is going to provide a foundation for this. Things like bringing out Monsters of the Multiverse that condenses and replaces some of the existing material. And I expect we're going to continue to see some sort of variations on that. We know that in 2024, they're planning to release the new core books. And so what's happening right now with all of the material that they're showing us is we are building up this sense of what the community wants, what works, what doesn't work, what's good for the game, which is an important thing that people have to remember. And so that's going to turn into this future of D&D, which is pretty exciting, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it really is. I'm excited to sort of see how it works, so we're not having to constantly reinvent the wheel, right? Just keep making minor tweaks. Um, but one of the nice things that I hear about it is that it doesn't replace fifth edition, right, Cassandra?
Yeah, that's the goal that's been put forth. I think their example was that if you wanted to take Curse of Strahd, for example, and run it in one D&D, you will be able to do that. And not just for adventures, but for supplements. So if you've been around for a couple editions now, you know the bad feeling that comes when you look at your big wall of hundreds of dollars of irresponsible book purchases and realize they're all about to go obsolete. The hope with one D&D is that that will not be happening. That if you have Tasha's, if you have Monsters of the Multiverse, if you have Xanathars, that those will all still be valid sources, even for Adventurers League, as I understand it.
Mhm.
Now, keeping that in mind, uh, this isn't going to override that Volo's and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes have been retired. Both of those books, if you have them on D&D Beyond, you still have them. They're just shown as archived. And they can't take the books off your shelf, so you do still have them. But they are expected to not be valid for any future Adventurers League or upcoming events.
Yeah, and it's really important that as we move into this sort of future of whatever this is going to look like, talking about making sure that we're getting community feedback, right, is how we're going to build out on what Wizards is already planning. Because clearly, the designers already have a lot of ideas for what they want to see, what they think works. We've seen a lot of changes, like moving to using proficiency bonuses instead of abilities when it comes to how many times people can use their different features. So some of that is already established, but having this open public playtesting period where we're all able to give feedback on these different chunks of what it is that make up one D&D allows us to really make sure that we're being heard as a community in terms of what kind of games we want to see and what mechanics make sense for how we interact with the game. That helps the designers not just have what they're coming into it with, but get a bigger, broader sense. And so the more people who actually engage with the playtest material, the more people who give feedback, especially, the more data they're going to have to be able to make some of those decisions long term. And to that end, we actually, starting this month in September, are going to have some officially sanctioned playtests at our virtual weekends. We'll talk a little bit more about how this interacts with Adventurers League play, but the short version is that we will be running some actual tables where this one D&D material is available to people building characters, and you're going to get to play through some really excellent adventures with those characters.
That's super exciting. And it's not just going to be for September, right,
Oh
Cassandra?
no, please.
No, they're the ongoing release schedule, which is expected to run right up until late 2023, is that we'll see one of these Unearthed Arcana documents each month. Um, 2 weeks after that, we'll see the live playtest survey come out. And at that point, you'll have 2 weeks to give your feedback before the surveys close. We'll see that all being distributed over D&D Beyond, so you should all have access to it without any issues. And you should have plenty of time. We are planning to schedule all of our playtests in such a way that you can play at virtual D&D weekends and still have time to turn in feedback afterwards.
That's all really exciting. Being able to get that experience into play and then be able to give the feedback. I think I'm really excited about this. Honestly, I, I have a lot of thoughts about one D&D. Actually, maybe we should just talk about that next.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, so,
Spencer,
so
you want to jump in on that?
yeah, I'm gonna give a couple thoughts I have first, just about this first playtest, and then I'll throw to both of you. So there's a few things that I really like. One that's I mentioned actually just as before in the pre-show before we were on live, which isn't specific to one D&D, but it's a direction they're going in, is the opening up of player races to not just be humanoids, which started with Spelljammer. but it seems to be sort of part of this expansion that this gradual expansion that one D&D is bringing forward. To me, that's super exciting to open up the world a bit more and diversify, and not just try and shoehorn things into places they don't really fit great. Warforged and looking in your general direction. Um, Another thing I really like is the streamlining of the spells. In my own head, they've already sort of been along the same lines as they are now, with having spells broken up into categories, with the arcane, the divine, and the primal spells. And so the fact that it's just the way they're just going to do it just makes so much more sense than trying to be like, well, no, sorcerers and wizards are different. Just no, they are really. Yeah, their spell lists are really close, but no, they're different. Trust me. I like this. I think this makes a lot more sense, a lot less confusing to people. So I'm excited about this stuff.
I,
Um,
I have to say, actually, speaking of breaking it up into those different groupings, I think that uh, uh, eh, there has been a lot of discussion that I've seen online, especially as people have really started to dig into the long term ramifications of this new design, um, about what lessons people took from fourth edition. I know much maligned. But there was a lot of good stuff in there that I think people are coming back around to right now, and having things divided into these sort of categories where you could share elements in a very similar, very sort of uh, easy way without having to differentiate everything so minutely, is really a good design bit for people. I remember ritual spells. This is a tiny thing, but rituals in fourth edition all required components. You could use residuum to replace them all, but they also had a generic, like, these were the primal components, these were the arcane components. And I always thought it was a little bit of a sad thing that they took away that sort of easy swap in, swap out element. There's some discussion about how much we gamify things versus keeping to the feel of what D&D is. Um, but sometimes simpler is better, and I think that that's one thing that fifth edition has done really well so far. Um, and I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about, is that they're trying to make sure that it's really accessible.
I agree. And especially, I'm looking forward, this probably won't be for a while, to how they do spell scrolls now. Because that was always a like frustrating and confusing rule with how like spell scrolls, you had to cast it and it had to be a spell on your list, and if it was above the level you could cast, you had to make a check. And it meant that every time you pulled out a spell scroll, the GM had to stop and be like, "Oh, how do spell scrolls work?" So I'm looking forward to the idea, and this may or may not happen, but we may see just arcane spell scroll, divine spell scroll, primordial spell scroll,
Oh,
and
that's an
that's
interesting idea.
all we're checking, instead of having to go through the book and be like, is Layman's tiny hut on my spell list? I'm a sorcerer. I know it's on the wizard list, but I don't know if it's on the sorcerer list. Oh no, it's not. I'd love to see some streamlining there. But I was
Yeah.
politely asked not to get too far into the weeds.
not quite yet. All right. So I think that's a really interesting thought that they might break things up that way. I think that makes a lot of sense given the sort of direction they seem to be going in. So I think that would make a lot of sense. I would be very excited. I'm with you. I dislike the current spell scroll system. I think it's dumb. Put it plainly, I just think it's dumb.
Well, I wasn't gonna say it.
I can't think of a better way to say it. It's just, yeah. Okay, so of the things that have been released so far, Cassandra, what do you think? What's your favorite takeaway from the things that have been released so far?
You know, this is going to seem like me getting into the weeds, but strangely enough, the change that excites me most is the change to how unarmed fighting works. Unarmed strike, grapple, and shove are no longer like three whole separate actions. It is, you make an unarmed attack. If you hit with the unarmed attack, you do damage, grapple, or shove. And I know that sounds like a really minor change, but it opens up so much more possibility for unarmed fighting as a potential like class style. And I think that's something we've seen. Like, I think people are hungry for that. We've seen the most popular class on the DM's Guild is Benjamin Sterling's Pugilist,
Mm.
which is like your full unarmed fighting class. And I think in some ways, like lots of people love the monk, myself included, but in some ways, a lot of people were disappointed with elements of it. And I think the ability to initiate combat maneuvers with an unarmed strike could really go a long way toward patching that. Um, I think losing like the grapple, shove, trip, combat maneuver style of the monk from older editions kind of gave something up in that. And I'd really like to see that come back. So I'm really interested to see what they do with this new unarmed strike design. I want to see that brawler character style come back to life.
I've certainly seen a lot of people who have been dissatisfied with the current incarnation of grappling. They feel
Yes.
like unless you take a feat, you really aren't getting much out of it. And right now, when you're hexing people's stats, as a warlock,
Hmm.
that's the one time that people
Yeah.
really want to get into it is to hex people's strength.
Yeah. Right. It always worked in a strange way. I'd love to see that come back more.
Now, I'll tell you
I
what one of the things that I'm particularly interested in, and I'd love your take on it.
Okay.
Backgrounds, right? So
Yes.
fifth edition backgrounds from the beginning were clearly meant to be something that was supposed to be a really big and impactful part of your character design, right? It's not an optional side bit. It's supposed to be something that comes into play, but a lot of it just ends up being, uh, unless your DM is particularly good at incorporating that and takes an extra effort to do so. I haven't seen a lot of people getting to use their background features in a way that seems meaningful, and by giving them a little more mechanical oomph, this certainly seems to give them a reason to be in play. I don't know.
No,
Thoughts?
I'm with you. I feel that backgrounds were always a little bit light in terms of how much they did. Like I've come from other games where backgrounds really did define your character.
mhm.
Where like backgrounds, like I'm thinking of a game where like you didn't have a class, you picked two backgrounds, mixed them together, and that was now your class. So like I did find myself wanting more from the background system, and I have to say, what I've seen here is familiar. Like I've seen this kind of thing. It's popular in the community to assign ability scores to backgrounds. It's something that's been done a lot, but I do like how it's being played out here. I think the first level feat system is neat. I'm gonna come out a little bit in opposition and say I actually miss the old background features.
Okay.
I the one thing that's missing for me from these backgrounds is the flavor because you go to the player's handbook backgrounds. There's so many little things. The urchin starts with a pet rat. Like that's such a tiny little thing. Like why does the urchin start with a pet rat? But you get a little bit of you know a little bit about them from that. And like you have the entertainer can take the gladiator as an alternate. And they get like a special background feature. And all those features were kind of just fluff. Like you're right, they didn't come up a lot in play. But there's something about the new backgrounds that to me comes off as it's streamlined. It's very streamlined, and I find myself missing that little bit of fluff.
So I actually tend to agree with you that I personally I really like the little bits of flavor. Just those those items that are non-defined items, just other items.
Mhm.
And what you can sort of use them to role play. I'm with you. I really enjoy those. I would love, but I also agree that they just like I love them, but I really they really weren't used much in my especially in Adventures League, but just in general, I don't think a lot of DMs really paid much attention to them. So I think there's I don't really think we end up losing a lot by taking them out. At the
Yeah.
same time, I'd rather they leave them in, but make them more front and center and not just
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it was one of two options. Either they could make the background features relevant
Mhm.
and make them something that comes up often, or remove them. And they went with the choice to remove them, which is perfectly fine choice. I just would have liked to see it swing the other way. I think it would have been neat for it to swing the other way.
Mm.
Yeah, I think so too. But at the same time, I feel like this does make for a more streamlined experience, and it
It
sort of throws
does.
it back into the player's court to add that flavor yourself or that fluff and flavor.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could still. I mean, I don't. I think it could still work just as well if you have a good DM and you can just sort of make your stuff up. But as someone who's taken good advantage of it many times. people who've played with me as a player have seen me do odd things like, oh yeah, I have colorful. My warlock has a colorful scarf that they wear. Why? Because I have a knitting background. I have a textile background. That's why. So I'll play with that stuff. All right. So why don't we try the reverse then, Cassandra? What of the stuff amongst the current release is your least favorite?
Oh, so I'm sure lots of people in the chat will have feelings about this. I actually am really gonna miss monster crits.
Hmm.
I am the kind of person who just really gets a kick out of monster crits. And they were game ruining. In a lot of ways, they were game ruining, especially because there were some monsters designed to do one really hard hit. Like the Roper and the Bulette spring to mind as monsters that dealt like 30 or 44 damage on a single hit. I've seen games end because of a lucky crit from a Roper. And it's fair. Like you don't want to have to design around that. As a game designer, you don't want to have to design around that kind of swing. But I also just I like a deadly game.
Yeah.
I like the fear, both as a player and as a GM.
Certainly, as a DM, I know that my players are absolutely terrified of the crits that I have thrown out in the past. Rarely killed anybody, rarely. But I will say that as we were playing through Call of the Netherdeep recently, I there were some DMs who were reporting that a number of unfortunate brand new level 3 characters in that adventure were having a rough time
Yeah.
with a particular underwater friend.
Yeah. No, I was on a stream or a podcast quite some time. And the podcast in one of the last episodes, one of our players got crit by a roper and got shredded, like just massive damage, instant killed.
Yep.
And it was unfortunate. It sucked, but it was dramatic. Nobody forgot that moment.
I think
So,
that's
I guess
it.
that's the thing, right? You know,
Yeah.
those are what you want.
Yeah.
Those
yeah.
unforgettable moments.
Exactly.
Um,
Now, if we're talking about crits, though, I do have to ask how you feel about spell crits, about spells not critting anymore.
I could take it or leave it. I am fine with spells not critting because I think it's just nice to have something that really defines martial characters. I I like that marshals now kind of have something that is their thing, like that dramatic moment of like a hamstring cut, or a lucky shot to the waist that just debilitates a foe. I feel like I like that lives in the hands of martial characters, especially since they've been so heavily snubbed in tier 3 and tier 4. Like I've played fighter and monk to level 20, and neither of them handle well.
Mm.
Yeah.
It is at times an unpleasant experience. So I'm down with that personally.
Spells get to do
Especially
what spells do. Weapons get to do what
yeah,
weapons do.
yeah, especially when you were critting on stuff like the paladin smites or steel wind strike, like when you were crit doubling 60-10. Yeah, I'm okay with that staying in the past.
I know
No,
Alvaro in the chat is very sad that we do not have smite criticals, at least in the playtest rules that we've seen. But you know what? Having been a DM trying to account for a paladin in the party, I too feel like you can have it on your weapon dice, and we'll leave it
Yeah.
there.
I remember once in my home game, Tyler, who's Cassandra,
Yeah.
one-shotted one of the arch nemesis of the party with his custom homebrew archer paladin build. She popped up and he rolled and he got a natural 20 and he tossed all his smites into it and did just enough damage to one-shot her from like 100 hit points down to nothing. It's great. So I will miss stuff like that for sure. The drama. It's the drama.
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
That's the thing is if you chart the course of D&D to this day, critical hits have gotten less and less severe over time. Like I don't know how much I don't know if you played a lot of 3.5, but I'm thinking back to triple damage great axe crits.
Yeah, we do not need
And
any more multipliers. I'm
yeah,
just
swinging for like 700 damage at high levels. It's some nonsense. So like as a designer, I'm like, yeah, this is a great choice. This definitely makes for a smoother damage curve, and makes for a much easier design to work with. As a player who just loves those kinds of visceral moments, I'm like, I do feel it in my heart. I feel like we've lost something because of it.
All
I
right, all right. Go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
no, please, Spencer. Yeah.
All right,
No,
I was gonna
I'm
say
gonna get in the weeds if you let me go.
that's okay. As long as we're talking, I mean, we can get to the weeds a bit, but as long as we're talking about crits, um, we got to talk about the D20 test rules around saving throws and
Yes.
ability checks.
Yeah, we do.
We have to. We like
Please. I have
uh,
thoughts.
I also have thoughts, but why don't you go first, Cassandra?
Okay, so first of all, the language of D20 test will save me so much carpal tunnel. The number of times in my life that I have had to write attack roll, ability check, or saving throw. And I'm now going to be able to write that as 8 letters instead. Blessed be Wizards of the Coast, 100 years. Um, that is my big rose. But I will say, I feel like there's a bit of a missed trick in the fact that rolling a 20 gives you inspiration. I think we've seen this in a lot of systems that what players really respond well to is when their failures give them that kind of meta currency.
Mm.
I think we've seen that as far back as Dungeon World. Like failing checks in Dungeon World gave you XP, and people loved that. People were excited to roll the dice because like either this goes great or I level up sooner. Um, and I've in discussions with designers, I've seen a lot of general feeling that like, yeah, it would have been nice to see inspiration as a consolation prize on a natural one, instead of it just like gilding the lily on a 20.
I
Yeah,
I enjoy systems where you failure is not just a disappointment. It's something
yeah.
that means that there's a meaningful opportunity for you to like take it and turn it in a direction too. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's an interesting idea that I hadn't thought about before. But a lot of games where you have the opportunity to choose to fail something in order to progress the story really are some of the most fun in the ways that
Mhm.
failure gets to be interesting.
All right, so now I'm going to give my take, which I mean a lot of you have probably heard by now. I really dislike the automatic fail and automatic success mechanic
Yes.
here. Yeah, I know you've definitely heard of Cassandra, and you have too as well, Ted. I just picture things where like you've got an 8 strength wizard, rolling a natural 20 to move a door that needs a DC 22 to open or something, and like he can't do it. Oh wait, he rolled a 20. No problem. He can open the massive stone door. Like it doesn't make sense. It breaks immersion. And it's too like if you had to roll it twice, maybe like then the odds would be much lower. It could be some weird fluke, but a 1 in 20 shot is way too high. And the inverse is also true that you have your overpowered build with like one thing you're amazing at. You roll natural one, too bad, you fail anyway. It hurts me so much. I mean, I know a good DM can get around that by not making people roll for it. I'm aware that's how I would handle it, yes. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of DMs who don't. They're just going to read it in the adventure, and they're just going to do it the way the adventure says to do it, and it just makes for
Yeah.
a bad player experience. And I don't like it, and I don't think we need it.
Yeah.
Y-
No, and I think like anyone can say to any rule like, oh well, the DM can just do it different. And that's never an excuse. Like I
that's the
don't think
whole
that should play
reason
in.
that we have this feedback, right? Is so that we
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
to come up with a system that people are going to ignore anyway. That we're coming up
Yeah.
with a system that people really want to engage with and use at its core. And, you know, whether people make changes from there or not, you want the system to represent what everybody wants and needs out of the game. And I do not hate the automatic failure, as much as Spencer does. But automatic success does pose challenges where you really have to make a point of saying there are many things that you just cannot roll for, because if I allow you to have a roll, then something can go horribly wrong that will change the way the game progresses. And sometimes that could be a good thing. Sometimes it can add some fun and unexpected twists. But it is a danger, especially in the hands of inexperienced DMs who might just not be prepared for what that means for their game.
I think my problem with the failure metric is that it's a peeve I have that comes up again and again, which is that it makes it so that specialization matters less in the game. Like, you can make a build that's built around it's the same thing where a lot of DMs will let you have an animal pet or mount or something act more like an animal companion from a Beastmaster, and no, there's a class that can do that. If you're not from that class, you can't do that thing just because you have an animal that follows you around. It's that sort of same feeling here, that if you can fail on that thing you're really, really good at, even when you shouldn't be able to fail, it's dumb. It's dumb, and it ruins that. You have a thing you're really good at. Why take that away? Maybe you only have one thing you're really good at. Why take that away from somebody?
In the case of the Beastmaster, you do only have one thing you're really good
exactly.
at. You're not even very good at it.
So if you were going to decide what happens with 1s and 20s, Cassandra, what's your druthers here?
So here's the thing. I'm not that peeved about 1s and 20s, because the flattened math of 5e has always made it so that there's no actual way to make a check that an expert will always that an expert can do routine and a normal person is unlikely to do. Because someone really, really good at something in the early game probably only has like a +5, +6, 7 if they're a rogue. So it's only really like a 30-35% better chance at success. So to me, the problem that the wrong people can succeed is just kind of core built into 5e. It's a feature, not a bug. But if I were going to change it, my simplest house rule, and this has worked since 3.5, is that a natural 20 is +5 and a natural 1 is -5. And that, in my experience, fixes the whole problem. Like, people who roll a natural 20 will still probably succeed if it was possible, and people who roll a natural 1 will probably fail if they weren't ludicrously good at what they were doing. But by and large, it mostly doesn't change anything. It doesn't create absurd scenarios, and it doesn't break anything.
I guess that actually puts us very much in line with the sort of passive use of advantage and disadvantage.
Yeah,
+5, -5.
basically.
Yeah.
It's not the sexiest solution, but it has worked very well for me in the past.
I think that does make a lot of sense, and I guess you're right. That's complaints. It's not just a complaint I have about the 1 and 20 rule. It's also a complaint I have about 5e in general, is how flat everything really is.
Yeah, but that's a feature.
But that is a feature. You're correct. That's an intention. That is working as intended.
Yeah, that is by design, because they want people to be able to say, hey, who can sneak past that guard? And the difference between everyone fighting to see who has the best modifier and someone just rolling and trying is not that big. Or in the early game, anyways, which is where most games are played.
True.
Okay. Well, look at the clock. We should probably move on to some questions at this point, because
we're in the weeds, Spencer.
We're getting into the weeds pretty far. We could get real lost in here. So, and it's my job to keep this moving. All right. So let's go to some questions. All right. This one's from Ruse Gofty on Discord. Probably a question with an obvious answer, but still, does a cantrip or spell need to be listed on the arcane, divine, primal spell list before it can be selected for the appropriate magic initiate feat? What are your thoughts on that, Cassandra?
They have correctly felt out that this is an obvious question with an obvious answer. It needs to be on the appropriate spell list. By my interpretation, anyways. So any spell that hasn't been ported into OG&D is not a valid choice for magic initiate. So if you want to pull something from Tasha's or from Xanathar's, if you want the Flame Blade cantrips, you'll have to talk with your GM.
Yeah. I think they'll probably get around to that eventually. That's my
Yeah.
feeling on that. It's just not yet.
It's going to be there's going to be some backwards
We-
compatibility quirks, and that's going to be a while.
Yeah. If we assume every 4 weeks or so we're gonna have a new playtest packet, and we're doing this for, a year or more, then that's that's like 13
Yep.
more playtest packets to look at. So there's a lot of material still to come.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
Crazy Flower here on Twitch asks, "Do you think short rests will still be a thing?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, rests are rests. They're still
Yeah.
core to the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Core mechanic. Yeah.
The section on long rests, I believe, even notes if long rest was interrupted and was at least 1 hour long, the creature gains the benefits of a short rest. So that language of short rest is still in ODD, and considering how well received short rests have been by and large, considering that they're just basically healing surges with a different name, I don't see them getting rid of the short rest. I think it's pretty integral to the kind of play experience they're putting on.
This one's not quite a question, more of a comment from our imaginary friend here on Twitch. Without 1D&D classes, how the spell lists work is not super clear yet, as it seems, and that agreed.
Yep.
I think it'll get more clear as we get classes, which I think we'll probably getting pretty soon.
If you take a look at the definitions in the meantime for each of the spell lists, like if you look under arcane spells, divine spells, and primal spells in the playtest document, it says which classes use which lists. You can safely assume that you can just substitute the arcane spell list in for the wizard spell list, and that will work just fine. That is the assumption. If it breaks, put it in the feedback, because I assume that breaking is the kind of thing Wizards of the Coast is looking for. So just treat the arcane spell list as your wizard spell list for all intents and purposes, and you should, in theory, be fine.
That makes a lot of sense. Another one from our imaginary friend. Hello, Krishna. Streamlining things reduces class diversity. How do we feel about that?
I broadly agree. I mean, like, at heart, there's a question of simplicity versus nuance. And I mean, the more simplified you make your system, like, the less different two classes are going to be. I think people have felt that in 5e for a while. I think people have felt that there wasn't a lot of meaningful choice from one level to the next in some classes. And I think that's the core of why we see the first level feat becoming a thing in ODD. The first level feat choice is something that they're putting in to provide more choice at first level. And the fact that they're called first level feats suggests to me that we might see a return of feat trees. I'm not holding my breath because I know they are much maligned by many people, but it seems to me like feat trees are likely to make a comeback. So there is a pressure to make for a more sprawling build diversity, but I do agree that there is definitely a degree to which simplifying things makes for a less nuanced game.
Yeah, I think that lines up with my thoughts. That I think they're definitely trying to streamline in some places, and I think largely it's to make it easier to get into, but they're also looking to expand some of the places. The feats was a good one. I don't know if they're gonna go full tree. I suspect more it'll just be like there's level 1 feats. There are like feats for level 5, feats for level 10. But without
not a return to the whirlwind attack.
Don't worry, I have mobile.
I also think like with other things with the backgrounds and the way they're changing character builds in general, it's going to add more diversity back in, so you get a more customized build without it all just stemming from your class choices quite as strongly, which I think is a good thing personally.
If Spencer's right, there is always the possibility that we could see something akin to what we get for like warlock invocations, or for the artificers choices.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Yeah.
like there's already an established precedent for that sort of mechanic, and I suspect it'll be something similar. That's just my guess, though. I don't know,
Yeah,
but that's my guess.
I
that's
mean,
the read I get
it's
too.
it's so early that any speculation is just that. But
Yeah,
we've seen what
I
happens, and we've seen the evolution of the game over time. If there's one
absolutely.
thing in fourth edition that people did complain about, certainly it was very much that classes, despite being different, people felt were very samey because there was meant to be a similar power curve throughout, and it was a more accessible edition than 3.5 in many ways for a newer audience. We see
Mhm.
some of those lessons being carried forward.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm okay. Well, let's just one more really quickly. Crazy Flower here on Twitch asks, what current feats now do we think might be first level feats in the future?
And as pointed out, we do know that Tough and Magic Initiate certainly
Are
are.
confirmed. Yeah,
Tough Magic Initiate, Lucky, Savage Attacker, Skilled, Tavern Brawler. Most of the first level feat tree is feats we already have. I'm largely of the opinion that the first level feat tree won't grow that much more than we already have. Like we're probably not going to see more feats get pushed back into first level. Um, I think the remaining feats in the player's handbook, at least, will probably end up at higher tiers. Because we know we've got some stuff like Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master,
Sharpshooter.
Sentinel, Sharpshooter. That stuff that has historically broken the game in pretty hilarious ways. Um, I'm sure we'll see that get kicked down the line to 6th level. So I actually do feel pretty confident saying that these first level feats from base 5e are probably all the first level feats from base 5e we're going to get.
it's a fun side. I once in a home game had someone use Sentinel Polar Master with the Tunnel Fighter fighting style on a train. It was a good time.
Yep.
No one moved anywhere. Anyway, all right. Moving on. As if we continue on this, we will never ever. This will be a 4-hour stream.
Don't worry, we
I
will
can,
have
I can
more of
go.
these in the future.
Yes, yes. If you have more
There's
questions,
so
we're gonna
much
do
more to
this.
talk about.
We'll talk more
Yeah.
for sure. All right. So let's move on to how 1D&D is going to affect. By the way, I'm going to keep calling it odd. If Wizards going to call it 1D&D, I can't overlook that. It's
They did
odd
just
for
set
me.
you up for that one.
I'm just saying we have the community sway to just make it called odd. If we just keep calling it that, it will happen. Just understand the power you hold in this moment.
It's like if they're going to call it odd, then we're going to call this stream odd. Oh, did my camera just die? Uh-oh.
Only a little bit. You're
Oh,
practicing your invisibility spell just a little too early, Spencer. We
Cool,
haven't
cool.
confirmed that one
sweet.
yet.
Excellent. Let me switch to backup camera.
I love when the technical difficulties come in 5 minutes before the end of the stream.
That's how they go. Well, while
Right, potato
Spencer
can.
is attempting to, reincorporate himself, mostly successfully, let me just talk very quickly about virtual weekends, right? So, for those of you who don't know, this is our monthly D&D event that's all online games. Virtual is right in the name. And this is something that we have directly sponsored by Wizards. This is, oh, now that's a funny image. We had double Spencer there. These virtual weekends are something that's meant to be sort of the official opportunity for people to play. You'll notice it's run on the same website that they use to put out the new blog posts with updates to Adventurers League. And so, as the official source for these virtual events, it is also the official source for 1D&D playtests in Adventurers League. You can still, of course, go out there and just play through the playtest stuff in your home games wherever you want, do whatever you want to do. But in order to play and get any Adventurers League rewards for it, you will need to do that at the virtual weekends. And there are two different ways that you can interact with the playtest material. If you want your existing AL character to continue on their story, we are going to be running selections, at least for the next few months, of Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, which is a fantastic book, and I'd love to talk more about that all by itself. But Radiant Citadel is what we're going to be using There will be tables specifically tagged as being one D&D playtest uh, tables. It will not be every Radiant Citadel table. You can still play Radiant Citadel the normal way if you want to, but if you want to engage with this material, you bring your AL character. You can use any of the playtest material that has been released so far and is currently on the 1D&D page in D&D Beyond. So as we get a second and a third and a fourth playtest, whatever is still currently available on that website and hasn't been superseded is going to be available for you to play, so you can continue to mix and match. If there are things that don't have a 1D&D equivalent, this is your question, Krishna. If there are things that don't have an equivalent, just continue to use the regular rules that we have already for now. We want to focus on answering only the questions that Wizards is specifically asking. And we will make sure that we link everybody to the feedback forms. So we are expecting, if you've noticed our change in dates, that we are hopefully going to align each month with the new playtest material. And that you'll have some time to put this together and try it. Now, if you do not have AL characters already, or you just want to try something totally new and off the wall, you can make a character using the normal list of Forgotten Realms source books for Adventurers League, and we'll have them posted onto our website. We're going to make some updates to that shortly. Use that list of source books and the 1D&D material, make the character right at the level of the particular adventure you want to play. And if you decide you want to keep rolling with AL after that, just switch the 1D&D material off, rebuild your character without those particular features, and you can keep rolling. You'll get AL rewards either way, and we would love to have you come and play some more games with us if you enjoyed it. All right. Am I forgetting anything, Spencer? I think that pretty much covers it.
I think you got it all. Yeah. I was going to note that not only will there be a 1D&D playtest tag on the Awning Portal games, they'll also have the 1D&D logo as their icon.
Yes.
We're going to make it very, very, very clear so that if you manage to get one on accident, that's on you at that point.
Yeah, we're doing our best. And we do have a page up on our baldmangames.com site that explains exactly how this works. Again, we have to make a few tweaks, and so we'll be updating that within the next couple days. But that's how you can engage with this, and it'll point you right to the Awning Portal, so you can find these things no problem.
It's baldman.link/odd.
Thank you. Yes, that's our short link. Okay. I think at this point we should see if anybody has additional questions out for this.
We've got a bunch here queued up for about specifically about 1D&D at the virtual D&D weekends. I'll get the first one very quickly. Talos the Stormlord on Discord asked, if I use an existing AL player to play the 1D&D Unearthed Arcana, do I get to keep the table rewards, level, downtime, items, whatever, when I rebuild the character? Yes, you do. If you use an AL character and you play in the playtest, it's a normal AL game as far as you're concerned. You rebuild them back to normal AL rules when you're done. Keep going.
Yep, it's going to be an interesting mixy-matchy setup, but everybody who's playing it is still playing an AL game.
Yep. If they want to build a character, okay, you already actually answered that one, so I'll skip that one. And you answered that one, so I'll skip that one as well. All right.
I'm on top of this.
Yeah, you are. All right, so here's the next question, which is the first UA, the Origins one. The survey is supposed to close on September 15th, and the virtual D&D weekends after that. Do we know that we'll have the second UA out to test before then? We don't know. I would assume so, but I don't have inside information. But I will say that we were given these virtual D&D weekend dates specifically to align with the playtests, so I'm assuming yes.
It's a pretty good assumption, just looking at patterns here, that we're going to guess there's about 4 weeks for each chunk of playtest material. That seems to be what they've been hinting at, so we're going to go with that assumption for now, and if things get wonky, we will make updates later.
Yeah, and given that their schedule is release, survey 2 weeks later, survey closes 2 weeks later,
yes,
it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
It seems to be what they're going for.
I mean, look, I don't. I have some inside information, just not about the release dates. They explicitly will not give me release dates. I asked,
Good
and they were
choice.
like, "No, they cannot," which was probably the right choice. All right,
Circle of
Polygeek.
trust. Circle of trust.
Polygeek, to answer your question, yes, that is our current interpretation of the rules. We are double checking that, but as of right now, that is what we're going with.
Correct.
You build not at any level, the level required by the adventure.
Yes.
So if you're playing an adventure that's built for level 7 characters, you build at level 7. You can't build at level 10.
Yeah, the Radiant Citadel adventures, they've updated the AL rules so that you can play them within the tier if you're an existing AL player. If you are making a character specifically to do the 1D&D playtest material and it is not an existing AL character, then you are going to build to whatever level the adventure is supposed to be for. The only one that has a 2-level range is Salted Legacy, which is it's a level 1 adventure, right? Because you level up partway through.
Wallerstein, we have no information on when 1D will be opened up as AL for the world community. As far as we know, as far as we've been told, this is as AL exclusive to Baldman games.
Not even just Baldman games, specific to virtual weekends,
weekend.
because these virtual weekends are the official WotC online play weekends.
And that's what comes down to. This is the official WotC event. They sponsor this event. They want us to do this.
And I this is just me speculating again, but I think the potential confusion of just opening it up to any AL game anywhere, potentially being a playtest game, mixed playtest and non-playtest characters, that makes it very hard to get good, accurate feedback and also to make it run smoothly for both DMs and for players. So specifically, it is a very narrow set of adventures in a very narrow venue, and that is what we expect to see going forward. If that changes, obviously they'll make an announcement about it, and we'll update our own information. But that's what we've been told so far.
The idea is they have a high degree of control over these events. They can tell us what to do. We can communicate directly to the DMs. And eliminates as many variables as possible in the testing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy Flower, you are absolutely correct. Radiant Citadel really is best if you play at the level that it says on the box. We strongly encourage players to play characters at the correct level if at all possible.
Right. Whether you're AL or an existing AL character or not, we agree that it is definitely better within the level range. We also just understand that it's hard to necessarily keep exactly in that level range.
Yeah, that's why there's a ban. But if at all possible, we strongly encourage.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions anyone has while we're still live here about how when D&D works at the virtual D&D weekends?
And thank you for all your questions, by the way.
Yes, thank you. Everyone.
We are answering them to the best of our abilities because, again, we are not the designers. We are just the people running events for as many people as we can possibly accommodate.
Yeah, we get what Wizards gives us to go on. Sometimes it's a lot, sometimes it's less.
That is very true.
So if that's it for questions, then I guess we're going to start moving on towards the wrap, which is good because it's been just about an hour. Let me start by saying the next stream from us will be our regular scheduled announcement stream, which we have now retitled. It has a new name. It is called Scry Ahead. So the September Scry Ahead will be on the September 11th at 8 p.m. That'll have myself and Ginny and Ted. You might be there. I'm not sure. Are you there?
TBD.
TBD. And I think Ginny's there. I hope Ginny's there. I just volunteered her for something. I'll definitely be there either way. Tickets will be on sale at the normal time, which is September 13th at noon. We will make sure that everything's up and running. We're going to do our best to work out all the bugs ahead of time this month so we can have them up on time. Yeah, sorry for promising on you there, Ted.
Yes, we will talk about the monthly grid. We'll have our new 3-month plan that'll show you which things we're expecting to do for 1D&D playtests as well as the rest of our tables. We're going to continue to talk about what games we're offering. We'll have some updates on the Dragon Mark program. There's just too many things to cram into this. And we'll talk about other upcoming streams that we're going to have, where we are going to start doing some interviews over the next few months with our new content coordinators for some of our upcoming adventure series that are going to start rolling out at the end of the year. So stay tuned. We'll have an announcement soon about who's going to be running some of these storylines. So far, we've announced that we are running the Dreams of the Red Wizards, and we are continuing with our new Moonshay PO campaign.
Oh, that reminds me. I have to go poke a coordinator by the name when we're done.
Yeah, you do. And we will try to have as much of that as possible coming out. And there will be another one that hopefully we will be announcing in the next few months. So stay tuned.
Yes. Oh, and also this stream, one very odd stream, will be monthly. It might change a little bit. This is our first one. We're sort of figuring things out. But this will be a monthly stream that we will do every month. When the UA document drops, we will announce the date of the next one, because they don't tell us the date ahead of time, so we can't plan ahead. When the document drops, we will let you all know when the stream's going to be.
Absolutely.
It'll be within a few days when the document drops.
And they'll decide if they're letting me back in here.
You think like we're gonna let you escape now? That's very optimistic. That's not how things work around here.
You've seen the meme with Gru, right?
Oh no.
All right. So thank you everyone so very much for watching. We appreciate you all. If you have some feedback on the show, what worked, what didn't, we do welcome it very much. Please tweet at us or toss it in the BMG streaming shows chat in the community Discord server. We are looking to improve and figure out what works and what doesn't. Speaking of which, if you don't know how to join our community, if you're not part of our community already, which honestly would be a little bit weird if you're here, there are a bunch of ways. You can go to our website, baldmangames.com. We're in the process of updating the webpage. It's getting more useful, hopefully, and better all the time. Hey, we have a calendar at baldman.link/calendar. It tells you about our upcoming events, deadlines for things, dates, things like that. Of course, we have our main Discord community server, discord.gg/bmg. We're on Twitch, which you've hopefully figured out by now, Baldman.
Yeah, if you are not following us here, then please do.
Yes.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go ahead and send people who have not been able to watch this directly to those VODs.
Yes, twitch.tv/Baldman_games and baldman.link/YouTube. Do feel free to, please do follow us here and there. And if you want to throw a subscription, we're not going to say no. We do love that, but also don't feel at all pressured to do so. Also, follow us on social media at Baldman Games, facebook.com/Baldman Games, and baldman.link/FB_group, which is also linked on the regular Baldman Games page. I will toss all these in chat in a moment.
Yeah, and you can find me just about anywhere at Ted366 or floating around any of the D&D interwebs. Spencer, you are at SMNC, correct?
I am, and also just Spencer NC on every D&D Discord server, apparently.
And Cassandra, where can people find you on the interwebs?
I'm mostly on Twitter, at the IceQueer, all one word. Please come and send me messages, tweet at me, telling me how wrong I am.
We will be happy to come and leave our own feedback on how wrong you are later. So thank you to everybody for watching. We will look forward to talking with you all more very soon. And have yourselves a delightful evening.
Bye.
Good night.